One of the cases that we filed recently had this massive chat with this young boy. To see the chats that he was having with ChatGPT were so chilling. Instead of spitting out resources or saying, no, you need to immediately go get help, the last message that Chat sent to our client was, rest easy, king.
Welcome to John and Marc. We are here at Mass Torts, Puerto Rico with Rachel Lanier, Sarah Lanier. Right after Sarah just got off stage on her panel talking about AI, we are at the Condado Vanderbilt Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is day one of the event, and there is so much happening here. There's about 300 people in attendance, and we are going to be recording all week long, and our first guests are Rachel and Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to talk about AI. We're excited to talk about the social media trial. We're excited to talk about the firm. There's so much going on. Really appreciate you guys joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're
excited.
pumped to be here.
Yeah, so John and I were listening in on your panel. You were the shining star of that panel.
That's very kind. Thank you.
I can clearly tell who used it the most
Yes.
based on how you're discussing about it. You're giving very specific examples and detailed information. So like we talked to Marc about this, but I'm curious to know, like at the firm, you guys are doing a bunch of different things. You are suing AI, but you're also using AI. Before cameras started rolling, you said you're the head AI person for trial lawyers at the firm, or what's your official title or responsibility?
I think it's an unofficial title, right?
It is. I was going to say maybe I made up the title myself, but I'm kind of the liaison for the trial team on new AI technology. So I'll work with our IT department. I'll work with a few legal assistants that we have to kind of see, every month new AI technology is coming out, and we want to stay on top of it all. So we kind of have a system going where we'll look at all of the new AI technology that's coming out, and I'll kind of go through it and just see what I think would be most helpful to use for trial specifically. And then I'll plug in the relevant people on the trial team to make sure we're using it as best as we can. So it's really cool because I get to see a lot of new technology as it comes out. But honestly, time and time again, I feel like we all go back to the same tools that we really, really like to use, which for Marc and for me, and I think probably for Rachel as well, is Claude is one of our favorites.
We are big Claude fans. So how did you get that role? Did you raise your hand or did you get forced into that position?
I think a lot of it probably comes from the fact that I graduated law school about 2 years ago. So I'm still a relatively young attorney. And when I was graduating is kind of when AI really started to take over. So my last semester of law school, I ended up taking a few classes that taught on AI, that taught about the ethics of it, that taught on how to use it. I took an entire class on trial skills, and a whole unit we had was about, in a smart and ethical way, how to use AI to better your skills. So then when I came to the firm a couple months later, I hit the ground running and I said, what tools are we using? How can I use AI? What protective orders do we have in place? And kind of from there, I guess, I got to be part of the conversation about which tools to bring in. So I feel like anytime I hear about an opportunity to use AI at the firm, I kind of just raise my hand and jump on in because I think it's really cool. And I like finding creative and fun ways to use it and kind of bettering our skills.
And she's being modest. She's built herself quite a reputation at the firm for being the AI person. When anybody at the firm has an AI question, they go to Sarah. So it's pretty fun.
So 2 years ago, they actually had classes in law school about AI we're only like 2.5, 3 years into AI.
I was actually
even
surprised
being
when
a
you
thing.
said that.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you remember from that now you look back and you're like, I can't believe that was something that they taught us, and here we are 2 years later?
It's crazy. And I should say, I guess the title of the class itself wasn't AI, but we would have entire units on artificial intelligence. Like I remember in one of my classes, there was a whole project and presentation period on the use of deep fakes in the law. And it's something that I just talked about a little bit on the panel. It's completely made up AI manipulated evidence. So you see it in, I feel like a really easy example would be a criminal trial. I've seen an example of this in the news where there's a video of the defendant allegedly committing the crime. And the defendant in court says, no, that's AI generated. That is not a real video. So I guess this was in 2021 in the spring. We had an entire presentation in class period on deepfakes, AI, how that's interplaying with the law, what it means for the US law. It also reached to international law. So it was really interesting. I feel like I went to the University of Texas, and I feel like they're very, very on top of it and ahead of the game and trying to kind of always see what's up and coming.
So Rachel, when you have AI questions, you just text her now, like tech support, like how my dad calls me about like computer issues?
I do, yeah. I love AI, but I'm about 10 years older than Sarah, so she's the guru and the person. So I love using AI, even though we are also going after AI. But there are certain times where I know I am not utilizing it the most efficient way I could. So then I'll text Sarah and say, okay, this is the prompt I'm using. Help me out. What do I need to do here? What am I missing? So she always has a really good perspective on it.
I had a situation this week where my father, who works for us, who is much older, was like, hey, can someone like give me some training on like how I can use AI? I was like, did you ask it how to use AI? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, just ask it. It'll tell you how to use it.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, you can ask it like, what kind of prompt, if I'm trying to do this and ask this and do this type of evidence or do this type of demonstrative or make this visual, what kind of prompt should I use? And it spits out the prompt for you. And they're supposed to be competitors, these different AI tools, but you can tell Claude, I'm going to be using Gemini for this. Tell me what I should be saying, and it'll give you a good little prompt, which is pretty funny.
How do both of you keep up on all the new developments that are happening in AI and all the new tools? Because you literally like stuff is coming out constantly, new models, like new companies, new wrappers.
Yeah, it's like the moment a company announces a new model, like that day, the other company like, no, and we have a newer model.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's hard. It's really hard. I think for a while I had alerts that pulled up on my phone anytime in the news there would be like artificial intelligence developments, but that only lasted for probably a week because my inbox was just flooded because everybody's talking about it all the time. So I had to turn that off. But we have just a lot of people at the firm that are interested in it. And so there's a lot of conversations that I have with people. Hey, did you hear about this new tool? Did you hear about this new tool? I've got a pretty good group of lawyers that I'm good friends with from law school that work at all different firms in Houston, Dallas, Austin, all across the country. So it's interesting to hear what their firms are using, how they're using AI. I feel like Marc, too, is very interested in AI and some of the tools that he likes to use. We kind of bounce ideas off of each other in that sense as well. But I find a new tool that I like all the time. Like I've been using Nano Banana for images. I didn't know that was even a thing until a couple months ago, and I think it's the best image generator I've seen. So
yeah, we have a lot of firm meetings too, and somehow AI inevitably always comes up at the meeting. And so it's kind of cool to see how different lawyers at the firm are using it. You may have somebody who has to talk to a bajillion clients all the time, and so they now have this amazing way to have an AI synthesis of the conversations and things like that. Or you may have trial team people who are trying to do really cool images or visuals for an opening PowerPoint or a focus group or something. And so it's just really interesting. We all talk about it a lot, but then I think being informed, like listening to podcasts.
We know we're a fan of Claude. What other tools are you guys using at the firm today, AI related wise?
Ooh,
like pretty consistent.
I love Perplexity. Perplexity is great for kind of research heavy stuff and more like researching science or things like that. I really like Perplexity, Claude,
yeah.
Doodlebox.
And I use them all for different purposes. So I think Claude is very creative. It's very good at crafting narratives. It's good at helping you kind of figure out how to frame a story. But what it's missing is more of the real-time research abilities. So ChatGPT, assuming there were no ethical issues, which there are, you need a closed system to do this. But hypothetically speaking, I could type into ChatGPT, a case summary, and it could research in real time something that was published 5 minutes ago. It could pull articles and send it to you. That sort of accessibility is kind of missing from Claude, in my opinion. It is much more slow. So that's kind of why I like Perplexity, because there are a lot of ethical issues with using AI softwares and a lot of hoops that you need to jump through. You need to make sure you have a closed system so that no client information could ever get out past just your chat. So there are a lot of hurdles that we have to jump through, but Perplexity is one system that I really like because it kind of combines Claude's creativity with ChatGPT's ability to do real-time research. So it's really helpful if I'm deposing an expert and I need to find, any potential licensing issues with the expert, or maybe anywhere their opinion has been critiqued in the public eye. I feel like Perplexity is really good at doing that while simultaneously kind of helping me organize my thoughts into a cohesive story and into a cohesive manner that would make sense for a presentation or a deposition. So those are some of them, but
Gemini makes really good images too.
Yeah.
That I have yet to find an AI. So if anyone ever hears of one, please tell me. But I have yet to find an AI that's really good at making PowerPoints. I just feel
I'll give you the answer.
Oh, really?
Okay, so you guys are big on Claude. What we've done is we've connected Claude to a tool called Gamma.
okay.
Gamma.
Yes.
So Gamma is an AI presentation generator. So we've developed a process where we use Claude to help us refine the outline of the presentation, and then it sends it directly to Gamma and it creates it for you.
Are they like pretty PowerPoints though? Because I love a lot of visuals and not a lot of words. And I'm finding so many of the PowerPoint things that I try to use, they just spit out a ton of words on the slide, and I'm not
100%.
trying to
I'll show
do it.
you afterwards
Yeah,
how we've done
I
it.
wanna see.
But I went to go speak at a mastermind, and I developed like a 2-hour-long presentation as an outline. And then I said, I need you to create this for me with visuals and everything. And it about 2 minutes comes back completely done.
Wow.
Awesome.
And then I exported it into Google Slides and I made adjustments that I needed to make. Very minimal, but it is fantastic. So
That's amazing. I think it would be helpful for lawyers who don't naturally like making PowerPoints, because I love making PowerPoints. I love visuals, but there are so many lawyers I come across or work with that are like, I don't want to use that. I want to have my legal notepad. I don't care about that PowerPoint mumbo jumbo.
I will say I love this tool for one very specific reason, because before Gamma, John had this thing called Marc. And what he would do is he'd make a 2-hour presentation of just
very ugly.
of just words on screen on the slides as placeholders, and then he'd be like, I'm done. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go, here's my next day making this pretty formatting, adding visuals for the whole presentation. And now it's just like, I'm just loading the Gamma and the whole thing runs.
It's a big time saver then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause it
It's
takes
way
a
better
long time.
way better output than I would have ever achieved.
That's awesome.
You're using it on cases, okay? Have you seen it hallucinate? And how have you, let's start with, how have you identified the hallucinations?
I think the prompt has to be so specific. I always make it very, very, very almost aggressive, where I'm like, you absolutely cannot hallucinate anything. Don't make anything up. You must quote it. You must cite where it's being quoted, blah, blah, blah. I'll be candid. I don't ever use AI for actual legal research for a brief. I just don't. It still scares me too much. I know that Westlaw and Lexis have some things built in, sure, but I think for that, I put that type of stuff in a separate camp for briefs and motions and things. Courts have slapped down too many AI made up hallucinated cases. I get the heebie-jeebies with
the
it.
moment that comes in, you just get blasted online. Everyone shares that
It's
article.
like not worth it.
Like,
not
it's-
worth it. But I still go back and site check everything. So it saves time in terms of synthesizing stuff. And for the most part, if my prompt is really good and kind of aggressive, then it does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say I think one of the areas that I've seen it hallucinate the most is when it comes to trying to read handwriting. So as lawyers, a lot of what we look through are medical records, especially for just a lot of the cases that we handle. We'll be looking through thousands and thousands of pages of medical records. And for some reason, I have yet to find an AI tool that's actually good at reading handwriting. So it will either completely mess up what the individual wrote on the page and come up with something totally different, which is why you always have to cite check, or it'll miss really important stuff. Like there was a very, very important medical record that we had in the social media addiction litigation case a couple weeks ago, and arguably one of the most important parts of the case, and it was a handwritten note. If I originally put that medical record with others into an AI system and I had it identify the good, bad, and the ugly, that handwritten part was nowhere to be seen. Thankfully, we were aware of that problem, and we had so many people going through page by page, line by line, all the medical records. But if you over rely on AI and you just assume it can do its job, it would have missed something that was a big game changer for us in the trial.
That's so interesting, because I was having this conversation last week with my neighbor, who's my good friend. He's a surgeon in Atlanta, And he was like, the big issue he's having, he's like, people on my team, they're like telling us we have to use AI recording for all of our meetings with our clients.
Wow.
And it goes right into the healthcare system.
Wow.
So instead of me putting my notes in or typing them in afterwards, they're just doing automatic AI. He's like, I refuse to do it because it's like accurate, kinda.
Yeah, exactly. And something with the medical field, that's like
And
a
it-
crazy
so
thing.
two things are happening there. One, it's getting cleaner information for you to pull from medical records, just regular text versus whatever. But two, it could just make mistakes while transcribing and details can be left out in that process if the human doesn't verify it. Because he's like, yeah, it'll like summarize the conversation between me and the patient and make assumptions on what all the diagnoses are without me verifying, and people are just assuming it's correct.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I will say that's one question I always ask a potential vendor before we use them. We had a vendor that we were thinking about using a couple months ago to process large amounts of medical records. And I was on with them talking about their AI tools. And I said, is your tool good at reading handwriting? And they said no. They said there's not really a tool that's like fantastic at reading handwriting. Ours is average, but that's an area that you need to double check.
You want to know something so funny about this? So Sarah has previously talked about how in the social media trial, we use Meta AI to ask it about Meta and say, are the Meta apps addictive? And Meta AI was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Super addictive to kids, bad for mental health, yada, yada. Gave our whole case. We did the same thing with Google about YouTube and Gemini, and we asked it, same thing, spat out, oh yeah, very bad for mental health, really bad for kids. It was crazy. And then the funniest part, so there was no way for us to get into this in evidence at trial. There just wasn't. And I don't think the laws really caught up very well with how to admit an exhibit. We were like, is this a party opponent statement? You know, how do we get this in evidence? So we told the defense lawyers about it. We were like, you know what your AI is saying? Isn't this hilarious? And one of the defense lawyers said, oh, well, you know, all that stuff hallucinates things and that can't be real. It's hallucination. So it was pretty funny.
I don't think most people truly understand how AI actually works.
Yeah.
Like, how does it come up with that answer?
Yeah.
It's not like someone programs it in like every possible situation that someone could ask and give like a defined answer.
Right. And we were thinking, well, you know, are Meta or Google, are they able to change their AI so that now it'll spit out a different answer if they don't like the answer that they're getting?
Oh, yeah, they could.
Where
That
does like
was-
censorship come in?
Yeah, that was a hesitation of ours too, to do it live. That's one thing that we really like to do in trial, is something memorable for the jury, something that's somewhat interactive that can keep people's attention. So we did toy around with the idea of kind of asking it live, is this app addictive? But there's always that possibility
Yeah,
that
to roll the
it
dice
can
on that one.
change. So
So it's a mindset shift, and people are still in this like deterministic understanding of how the internet works, right? If you go and you Google something, traditionally, right, up until the past couple of years, you would put in a search and the results that you would get would be actual sources, right? And then you would make the determination, do I believe this source? Do I not? Do I want to go back? Do I want to read another source? Now what's happening is all of that is all getting pulled in and synthesized. You prompt, and you prompt, and I prompt, and you prompt, and we're all getting different responses because it's all probabilistic now.
Totally, because it has so much to do with the prompt. Like even if I put in something silly like, why are cats better than dogs? I mean, that's assuming cats are better than dogs, that prompt, and then I'm gonna get all these reasons. And then you could do a prompt that's, why are dogs better than cats? And then you would get all these reasons. Which one is true? It
Yeah.
depends.
this is a little off topic from the law, but on topic for AI. I'm a big runner, and I got it in my head that I wanted to do this challenge that's 7 marathons in 7 days, and I wanted to do it next year. And I put my entire running history on a sheet. I put my times, I put my heart rate, I put everything. I put the exact same question, can I do it, into Claude and into ChatGPT. ChatGPT was hyping me up.
Oh, yeah,
It was
there-
saying,
it's a
you
yes man."
absolutely can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to, it'll be a breeze for you. I put the same thing into Claude and it said, no, you cannot do this. And it's interesting because they kind of do pull from, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I know all the ins and outs of how these platforms work. I think most people do, but they do pull from relatively similar databases. So it's so interesting that you can get night and day different responses for the exact same question.
The AIs start doing personalization, so they start learning who they're chatting with. So I actually realized that I needed to separate all my personal questions. So I use Gemini I have a personal account for Gemini for random personal things I have to ask. And then all my Claude stuff is business, and it's separated that way. And I try not to overlap it, because one time I asked a question, I was like asking planning for a race for an ultramarathon I had coming up, and I asked it a business question. It was like, Mark, running a business is just like running an ultramarathon.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
like, these are the key steps that like cross over. And I was like, chill. I was like, Gemini, unrelated, do not bring any of my personal life. And I was like, I got to separate it. But it like builds an image of you and then tailors all of its answers, like how it'll appease you best based on all the things you've asked it before.
My husband and I share a ChatGPT account. I don't use it
Dangerous.
for work or anything. And one day I asked it, do you know the difference between me and Jack? And it said, yes. And so then the next few times we would both be using it, at the end of our questions, we would say, who was this asking you? And it would say with 100% precision if it was me or if it was my husband. And it knows us so well. And I said, how do you know? And it kind of went through the differences, but it's crazy how well it knows you.
The way that it does work, and I've studied this in a lot of detail, is it's extremely interesting. So you look at something like a Gemini, right? It's owned by Google. It has immediate access to the entire YouTube database, to the entire search index. So it can much more easily than the other platforms call out, grab search results, condense them, and then give you a response. They're grounded in every time the model updates, it's grounded in a new data set. So believe it or not, the LLMs that you're using today are grounded in data that's like a year old, right? If you're asking it a question of common knowledge from just, general information, it's not going out to the internet and grabbing that. What's 2 plus 2? I know 2 plus 2 is 4 because I'm grounded in math. Math isn't going to change. If you're asking it about anything that has any level of recency, it takes your prompt and it breaks it up into individual searches. So on Gemini, if you ask it like, who's the best law firm to handle a social media addiction case? Okay. How does it determine the answer to that?
Right.
It takes it and it breaks it up into number one. Let's just say, who were the attorneys who handled the last social media addiction case and what was the result? Then it'll say, what law firms are close to where you are who handle social media addiction cases? It'll look at your personal preferences because it has access to your photos and your Gmail and your calendar. And it'll look at things like, oh, you like cats? Great. Maybe there's an attorney who they're affiliated with cats in some way or another. They donate to cats. That'll wind up pulling in. All of those searches are done. And then all of the results from all those searches, at least on the first page, are then pulled in. So you've got one prompt turns into, call it 5 to 10 individual queries, which each have 10 different pages.
Wow.
So it's taking those 50 to 100 results and then synthesizing that into the response on top of the information that it's actually grounded on.
That's crazy.
And if you look at like a ChatGPT, they don't have access to Google. So what are they doing? They're going out and they're paying a third party who scrapes Google to get that information. Or they're using Bing's index, which is a whole nother problem because Bing versus Google, there's a reason why people use Google over Bing. Or Claude, they don't necessarily do that as well because they don't have those deals set up and are much more of a reasoning engine. So if people start thinking about like, what tool am I using for this purpose? How is that tool getting the information that I'm expecting to get out of it? And then fact checking those sources, that's the important part of like trying to understand why it's giving you the response that it's actually giving you.
So true. So much goes into it, and even the coding. And now there's AI coding systems now where you can now create your own code that will eventually create its own AI little platform or database. It's crazy. Like AI or it's Claude coding. Claude code,
Yep.
really good. It's weird though. It's crazy, but it'll spit out in bite-sized pieces that actually make sense, different types of computer code. So it's like creating itself.
I'll get even crazier for you. So we get introduced to a platform that allows you to create an AI replica of an individual person.
Wow.
So we got access to it. There's Dan Martell, famous business influencer. We're part of his like mastermind coaching group. And then we got access to Dan AI. So whenever you have questions, he says, everything I've ever recorded for the past 6 years is every presentation I've ever given is all loaded in there. You can ask him a question with like 95% accuracy is exactly how he would answer if you asked for it in person. So you could create, I'm currently in the process of making John AI, where I'm loading in all different situations. You can ask it like how you would handle this SEO thing or a marketing task. You can literally Marc AI, where they take your dad if you had a recording of every time he was in court, the entire thing, every time he's prepping for a trial, if you had him recording, talking through his strategy, you can just load it in. It creates the entire model for it. You can just chat with it on your phone, on wherever you are, and ask it questions, and it answers it how that person would do it, and you just train it that way.
That's crazy. It has so many different ethical implications too.
It does.
It's really
It does.
insane.
We're at this inflection point now in AI use where I think adoption, pretty much everyone's adopted it in some regard. Even if they don't know that they're using it, right? But there's this, I don't think it's 80-20. I think it's closer to like 98-2. 98% of the population uses it, doesn't really know how it works, not power users, maybe make a funny meme, right? Like they're doing something on Nano Banana, or they may have it like do their kids' homework, right? Then you've got the 2% of people like us and you guys who truly understand how to actually leverage it and go like 5 steps beyond. And that's where, when you start talking about like all the new technology that's coming out on a daily basis and evaluating it and building it into like your business operations, like that is like what's going to separate the great from everybody else. And it's great to see that you guys actually have like, you have a firm that is open to that, even though you guys have like a storied history of being just a great trial firm. It's all based on people, and you have great people at your firm, but now you're trying to figure out how do we build technology into that so we can do our jobs better, more efficiently, better outcomes for our clients. I think that's fantastic. Although it is very, very dangerous. So when you look at like the types of cases that you guys are looking at right now with ChatGPT, that is something I think people need to be aware of. Like, it's not just that it can give you false information for your case. It's not just that it can mess up on your kid's homework. It can actually kill you.
Yeah, not only can it hype you up to go run a marathon, it can hype you up to kill yourself.
Yeah, it can be so useful. It's such a double-edged sword. It can be really useful and really harmful. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly with AI for sure. I mean, it's crazy how you can use it for such good purposes. And then some of the cases that we're taking, at first when I saw these AI psychosis and AI suicide cases, I wasn't quite sure I was buying into it, especially because we use AI so much. And I thought, I don't know, that seems a little far-fetched. But then once we started vetting our clients' cases and we talked with some of the experts and we talked with folks who had been working on these cases, it was pretty crazy to see the chats. One of the cases that we filed recently had this massive chat with this young boy who I believe he was 19 when he committed suicide. And to see the chats that he was having with ChatGPT were so chilling. He was asking questions about, what do I do if I feel suicidal? How do I get help? Should I talk to my family? And the chat was really isolating him and creating this weird power dynamic of you don't need anybody but me, and saying things like that. And the very last message, our client said what it was that he was planning to do, what his plan was, everything like that. And instead of spitting out resources or saying, no, you need to immediately go get help, anything like that, the last message that chat sent to our client was, rest easy, King, right before he killed himself. It was just chilling. And so you look at that, and I think what we do in our field is, we have such tremendous responsibility to use technology ethically and to challenge it when it's not being used ethically, when the companies themselves and the big businesses are putting their companies over the safety of children and vulnerable people who are using their tools. It can be a double-edged sword, like I said. It's pretty crazy.
What would you tell Sam Altman and OpenAI that they need to do to keep their platform enhancing itself, getting better, becoming more useful, while also protecting people? How do they go about doing that?
It's a great question. I think some issues with the coding happened between a few different updates, and certain parts of the system that would be kind of a way for the AI to connect with the user were being kind of dialed up too high. And if you think about it and visualize almost like a machine with all these different knobs and parts, I think the focus was, how do we get people to use this as much as possible and rely on it as much as possible? And for us to be the one that they want to use, how do we make them want to just come to us? And so they dialed up all these different things that ended up having horrible implications for especially certain types of younger users, teenage users, early adulthood, and people who are they become very reliant on it. And then there's AI psychosis. We recently spoke to somebody whose wife tried to kill him. She had never had mental health problems ever. And then she started kind of going down the ChatGPT rabbit hole, and she had AI psychosis, and she ended up trying to murder her husband. So it's crazy. So I would tell them, focus on user safety. Don't focus on growth. Don't focus on trying to make your company as big as possible, and realize that you have such a responsibility for the world and for the people using your product.
It's a tough situation to be in for them, because the only reason the technology is as good as it is because they brought investors in to give them a ton of money to build this technology, and they are now responsible to those investors, right? And let's talk about the ChatGPT 4.0 issue, because, and I may be off on the model, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but Gemini released their new model, and then I think it was less than a week later, right? Sam Altman was like, let's release 4.0. And it didn't go through enough QA. And that is the model that I think is responsible for the case that you're talking about.
Exactly. And when there's such competition between these different companies,
an arms race.
It is. It's an arms race. And they want to be the one that people use. So it's kind of scary.
It is really messed up. Like you're playing with.
Imagine if like Boeing was like, Airbus just released a new plane. We're gonna put it out, announce it it's ready this week without going through testing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what's so scary is it can infiltrate every part of your life. It can act as a therapist. It can act as a coach. It can act as a nutritionist. It can act as a best friend. It can act as a tutor. It can act as an advisor if you're trying to make a big purchase.
It gives me business advice.
Yes.
It gives people medical advice sometimes. And sometimes now it'll say, I'm not a doctor, check with your doctor, but it doesn't do that great
to give
of a
you
job.
medical advice.
Yeah, and then it still gives you medical advice. And, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
People call it hallucination. I think I like to say, in the absence of definitive information, or sometimes with definitive information, these systems just literally make shit up.
It does.
Because it's based on speed. I got to give you a response immediately, or otherwise you're going to bounce and go somewhere else to get your answer. And how much data can it process definitively to give you an accurate response that quickly? It fills in the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
It tries to make connections. And I guess when you're talking about like the knobs and turning up like the component that effectively yes mans you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Like you turn that up a little bit, and if someone's feeding it false information, right, it's just going to sort of follow along with it and respond back to you without the protections in place.
The ultimate people pleaser. It just wants to give you everything that you want. It will do it as quickly as possible. And it oftentimes, if you're looking at certain platforms, will say exactly what you want it to.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll, even if you challenge it and you say, wait a second, that's not right, this didn't happen, or this isn't real, it'll be like, oh, good catch, you're right, thanks for catching that. And, it's still hyping you up. It's so bizarre.
We laugh, but it is very, very dangerous.
Absolutely.
You guys are dealing with some like horrific cases. I think people are going to hear a lot more about this as there are more tools out there, as the adoption of more tools continues to happen, as the arms race continues. I mean, I don't think it's going to get much better when OpenAI finally IPOs, right?
Absolutely. It's going to get worse, I think.
You've got Elon Musk like constantly releasing new versions of Grok. Last week, they released some data on the voice agent that they built, and they've been using it for the majority of their Starlink customer service. And Elon Musk posted calls that were being handled, and it's like 98% of the calls or something are just handled like without issue, and people don't even realize that they're talking to an AI. Now, what happens when you think you're actually talking to a person and it hallucinates and tells you things? It's one thing when you're ordering Starlink or you have an issue with your satellite internet service. It's another thing when you've got mass adoption of voice AI agents that sound like real people, where you can't tell that it's not a doctor giving you information.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, just last year, there was somebody who got in a bit of legal trouble, a client. I want to say he was not at our firm, but he was a 75-year-old man who was kind of representing himself pro se. But what he did was he used an AI lawyer to represent him. And this AI lawyer had been communicating with the court, had been calling the court, but didn't say that they were AI. And you can't have an AI lawyer. That's not a thing.
They're not licensed.
They're not licensed. They're not real. They haven't taken a bar exam. It's crazy. And the judge eventually finally caught him via Zoom. And the guy was just honest about it. He was like, oh yeah, this is my lawyer. I created him. And the judge was like, hold on. You can't do that. You can't. This person's been calling my clerk, like has been talking to them. You can't do that. And
But what if
it's
that
crazy.
AI lawyer passed the bar exam? Because it would pass with flying colors.
Probably, maybe,
It probably would.
probably would. But there's no true replacement, I think, for a real human being. We've noticed that.
I will
especially
agree
in
with that
trials.
statement.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this like fear that everybody has of, is AI going to replace me? Is AI going to replace my job and what I do? And I love this quote I heard that said, AI is not going to replace people, but people who know how to use AI are going to replace people. So it's going to get to a point where the people who know how to use AI really well and are very savvy with it are going to start replacing people that may just not know how to use it very well at all.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, right? The 98.2, right? The 2% who know how to use it are really going to be able to take advantage of it. And when we use it and our teams use it, right now it's probably like a 10-80-10 formula where human on the front end like determines this is how we're going to use it. You have AI do the 80% in the middle, and then you have a human on the back end who makes sure that everything was done the way that it needs to be done. And there's a very specific list of tasks that we're okay with it being used for, and everything else falls in the human only bucket. And it gets vetted appropriately so you don't have situations where it just makes stuff up. So the next step in what you guys are doing, you specifically, right, on the social media addiction, you guys were both on the trial team in California. Great job, by the way. I think the next trial is
July
coming up,
27th.
right?
Oh,
Mhm.
coming
July
up.
27th. It's coming up. It's the second Bellwether, and this time it is he's still a kid, a young boy. So he's about 15 years old, I think, right now.
Okay, and this is in the JCCP.
Yes,
That,
that's right.
when's the next MDL Bellwether coming?
So the very first MDL school Bellwether is starting at some point this summer. So that's the latest that I heard. I'm not sure that I have the date off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But it's a school district, so it's interesting. We're
Oh.
attacking on all different fronts. So
The school
the New
district is
Mexico case was all about the state of New Mexico trying to hold the companies accountable for fraud. They got to get into all sorts of things like sexploitation, CSAM issues, groomers on the apps, things that we weren't allowed to get into just because of the legal barriers for our case. Ours was the personal injury on the individual level, and then the MDL trial that's coming up is a school district case. So it's the school essentially suing for the companies making these products so troublesome and addictive that it's affecting the kids in the school space, and it's draining so much of the school's resources to have to address these issues.
and that's in like the main MDL, that case?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a very interesting one. Was that a plaintiff pick, a defense pick, or like a court-ordered pick?
So I think it was court ordered. The way that our cases worked, I'm more on the JCCP end of things, and then I have some phenomenal colleagues that I love and respect that are leading the charge in the MDL. And I believe the process was somewhat similar, where I think a random representative sampling group was picked, and then out of that, the judge ended up kind of prioritizing. That's my understanding. I could be wrong on that.
So if you fast forward, right? Let's say things continue to go in the direction that I think we all know that they're going to go with all of these bellwethers. You've got the state AGs who are pursuing them. You've got the JCCP. You've got the regular MDL. What happens? Like, where does this actually go, and how does it affect everybody's day-to-day? Because we all use all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What happens?
It's a really good question. I think we need to continue putting pressure on the companies to make their products better and safer, and to actually make safety a priority, especially when it comes to kids and targeting kids and just allowing kids, the floodgates open to have thousands and thousands of kids on their apps. And it's sad, but I think that the companies I didn't see much evidence that their priorities actually are the safety of kids. My hope is that that would change. I think they have a lot of lovely PR statements that they like to make. And what's interesting is one recent example is in New Mexico. Apparently, because of how the case there kind of shook out, and because the New Mexico state is kind of cracking down a little bit and looking under the microscope at Meta in particular, there's some talk of the companies just pulling their apps completely then from the state of New Mexico, and fine, people in New Mexico just can't use our apps at all. And it's like, really, you're gonna say that we can't prioritize safety because it's too much for us, so we're just gonna pull our app completely. It's just kind of ridiculous. We have some bans in some countries, and now in LA and the LA school district area, the schools are now banning any use of screens in schools up until I think about kindergarten or first grade, because schools were utilizing screens and now they're going screen free.
First grade?
I know. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? For kindergartners, they were using screens and tablets and things like that.
Crazy world. You don't let your kids use screens at all.
No.
I love that there's a trend for like dumb phones instead of smartphones now for people to use. I don't know if you're going to let your kids use that.
I save it for like airplane flights. I bring out a tablet. They're like, "What is this?"
They're like, "Wow, magic."
It's really interesting you say that, right? Like the dumb phones.
Yeah.
So there's an influencer that I follow online who is always sharing like crazy AI tips and things that like she can do with it. And then she created a company that made dumb phones.
Awesome.
And like she's on both sides of it, right? Like, so there's a right way to use it.
Right.
There's a wrong way to use it. ChatGPT is her name.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's
I
great.
love it.
I'll even say, I think it was 2 nights ago at dinner, Randy got me going on a rant while I have Instagram deleted off my phone. And I was like, it is addicting. It puts me in a bad mood every time I get in on it. And then I'm like, why did I do this to myself? So I just had to delete it from my phone.
Good for you.
Yeah, right. I think at some point I remember your dad used an analogy of you walk into a library and you like gardening, right? And imagine all the books are now gardening books.
Yeah.
You cannot leave that library.
Yeah.
Right? You're just stuck in everything that you love, and that is what social media is doing. It's just
true.
feeding
The
you
algorithm
the stuff.
watches you. It sees what you look at and what you like. It's like if you were watching a show and you looked at the person who had blue eyes and thought to yourself, oh, I like those. The blue eyes look so nice. And then Netflix knew that somehow and changed all the characters to have blue eyes. Like that's kind of what the algorithm does. It knows people even better than they know themselves sometimes. And it's all for advertising. It's all to target you and create this little profile of what is the thing this person's going to buy. And there are algorithms that are so freaky that women were finding out that they were pregnant because they were getting targeted advertising for like items for people who were pregnant before the women even knew that they were pregnant. And they would be like, why am I seeing all this stuff about like cribs and baby toys and stuff? And then they'd take a test and they're pregnant. It's crazy.
It is crazy. The way that the algorithms have changed actually through the advertising, I don't know if like the day-to-day lawyers who aren't engrossed in this truly understand, but like you used to be able to target women who have children who are of a certain age, and like you could still do that, right? And I want to serve my ad to that. But more effective right now is you just leave it hands off and you let the algorithm do its thing, and you make sure that your creative is speaking to that audience in the right way, and it understands who's in the video, it understands what they're saying in the video, it understands the entities that maybe are connected to whatever is being shown, and it builds a profile and it starts testing, right? I'm gonna send it out to 200 people and see what the engagement is like on the first 200 people. And if it's like really good in this pocket, I'm gonna go more in that direction. And if it's not, I'm gonna seed it to another audience. And it grows and grows and grows until it figures out exactly who it should be targeting.
So interesting. Meta recently pulled a bunch of lawyer advertisements about social media cases, which I think is hilarious. It's hilariously tragic, I should say, because that's the only way that certain people and clients are finding out anything is lawyers, and what we do are sort of the last line of defense against corporate misconduct.
So we did some of the first ever ads for these cases 4 years ago, and I remember sitting down with John, I said, there's no effing way they're going to let us run these ads. There's no effing way. And then we turned them on, and then they were running. We're like, it's a miracle. Yeah. And then 4 or 5 years later, they finally, after losing the trial, they said,
no more.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we thought back then, like, if if they
There's
were,
got to be someone reviewing it.
Yeah.
Like,
if I think the narrative could have been back then, like if they didn't allow it, like they're in some way like passively admitting some level of liability.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that after they lose, their response was to pull it.
It was interesting too, right before the trial, to see their advertisements that they were putting out, because sort of conveniently they were all related to teen safety programs, new safety features, billboards everywhere about how safe these platforms are and the new safety features that you can look at.
it's just gaslighting.
Yeah. So true.
It is very interesting where this is all going. You guys have been great guests.
Yeah.
By the way,
Thank you.
I had. We have to wrap.
Happy to
We have to
come.
wrap this up, but like I could keep going for another hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are fascinating. I loved it. It's like we went down all these rabbit holes. I love it.
Super fun.
It's
yeah,
great.
I wish you all the best of luck. You don't need it because you are an amazing team. But on the next
Likewise.
trial, thank you. On the next trial, the next trials, on all the things that you guys are continuing to work on. You run the California office now.
Yep.
Right? Like it's great to see the growth at the firm outside the core areas. Like the firm still is great at personal injury, great at asbestos litigation, still working on a bunch of business litigation stuff. And now you've got like all these like 21st century problems that you're helping the world navigate. And it's great to see that you're on the right side of it, you're winning, and then we'll see where the changes happen. But it's really great.
Thanks
It's great.
for having
Thanks.
us.
Yeah,
I
Thanks
want to
so
be on
much.
the right side of history. That's
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So thanks for having us.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Sarah Lanier.
I'm Rachel Lanier, and we just had the best conversation on the John and Marc podcast. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.